Welcome to a new edition of the brand called You. Today, I have a very, very exciting young millennial who's doing something straight after my own heart. He's building a chain of pharmacies. Krishna Killa, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Krishna is a BCom from St. Xavier's, Calcutta. He's a chartered accountant. He's worked for BCG and Bain. And now he has co founded LifCare, which is a subscription pharmacy for chronic diseases. Krishna, quite an exciting space you're in, but tell me a little bit about your early life and your early career.
Yeah, so I'm from Guwahati, Assam. I think, given we are recording this yesterday, the whole of Northeast is in boil. But so I grew up there. I did my high school from there. Then from there, moved on to Calcutta. Did my undergrad from St. Xavier's. Did my CA along with that. I really just wanted to set up a CA firm. But then I got a call from BCG, and at that point I didn't know what BCG was. So I asked, "Is it the same BCG as the BCG Matrix?" They said, "Yeah, it is. Do you want to come have a chat?" I was like, "Okay." So I went to Bombay, met them. Was one of the few people who got selected, and that was probably the first or second time BCG was hiring chartered accountants.
Okay.
And the people I met there seemed very interesting, and so I thought, why not? Let's do consulting for a while. So did that for a year, and from there was this trend of people going from consulting to private equity. So a couple of my friends had also joined, and that seemed a very attractive world to me. So I was like, okay. So I interviewed at a couple of places, got into Bain Capital in the private equity team. So spent a couple of years there. That was a time when we would look at a lot of deals, and I was part of the team which I was more aligned with a partner who did more work on healthcare and financial services and IT. So spent a couple of years there, and then it just seemed like the right time to start. So that's why I said, okay, let's quit this and start.
Okay. So it's just the opportunity that drove you from taking a decision from being a consultant to becoming an entrepreneur.
So I think I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Okay. I don't think I was meant for working in the corporate sector for too long. I always knew I wanted to do something of my own. And I think this last decade and the next couple of decades are probably the time when a lot of new businesses will be built in India and globally also for that matter. So I think now is the time, and it is less risky than what people perceive it to be in my view. So I think it seemed like
okay. So I'm going to ask you a question that a lot of people used to ask me when I founded Guardian.
Yeah,
you're not a pharmacist. Why pharmacy?
So I think I wanted to start a business, and I looked at a couple of sectors. I think if you look at India today also, and maybe 5 years ago when I was looking at it, there are really a couple of sectors which you feel like need a lot of more organized businesses. Healthcare is one of them, maybe agriculture is one of them, maybe financial services is one of them. But I at last pinned down on farms, on healthcare and agriculture. But within this, I thought agriculture can wait, but healthcare seemed more elusive, more attractive to me, and that's why I thought, let's do this. I got asked the same question the first day once we hired 10-15 people. All of them asked, "You're not a pharmacist, you are not from pharma, you don't understand anything about this business, how will you run it?" I was like, I understand a thing or two about business, so let me run this. You help me on the pharmacy side.
Well, I think you should be prepared to answer this for a long time. I mean, I founded Guardian and I was associate for 15 years.
Exactly.
And at every meeting in 15 years, I was asked, why did you enter this business? So, good, I'm glad you got it.
I think you started Guardian probably at the time when there was no organized pharmacy, or barring probably a couple of them, Apollo.
Yeah. So tell me, what is the business model of LifeCare and how are you differentiating yourself?
So see, I think the likes of an Apollo or Guardian or the mom and pop stores are stores where consumers can walk in, buy what they need, partly medicine, partly FMCG, and then walk out, right? And then again, they would have some need on the chronic medicine side. They would again go walk to that store, again purchase that. At times that store would home deliver. But the way this is done globally in the chronic space is saying that, for a set of chronic users, if they need the same medicine monthly, then I already know what medicine the user needs. I already know what frequency the patient is prescribed that medicine. I can deliver it to them at their home in a preset frequency. And if we take out the real estate cost associated with running a large brick and mortar setup, we can potentially pass on some part of this benefit back to the consumer. So that is basically the whole thesis of starting out, where we consolidate the whole supply chain, largely buy straight from pharma as much as possible, and then instead of setting brick and mortar setups, ship straight to consumer from our warehouse in a repeated monthly or 60-day frequency for chronic patients. It helps the patient maintain a medicine cycle, that at not miss dosages, make sure that they get those medicines on time and at a price at which it is more competitive than buying from any brick and mortar.
Correct. So how are you then different from all these e-pharma companies that have come up? They're also doing exactly the same thing.
Yes, so partly they are. So I think there are two ways to look at it. One is versus the brick and mortar, how are all the people who are the new age online pharmacies or subscription pharmacies doing? So I think if you look at those two sectors, then obviously the online and subscription part is very, very small fragment of the overall market. So probably less than a couple of points in market share, right? So I think there is a big opportunity for everyone in the space to grow and become big. Within that small pool of, let's say, people who have sub 2% market share, how are we differentiating is we are not doing it on transaction basis, we are doing it more on subscription basis. That for a chronic consumer, we would move him onto a subscription where the user prepays something to become a member. And that membership drives loyalty, and that membership allows us then to service other healthcare needs of the same user, because we know that his one core need is already tied to us. And that allows us to over time build a more broader offering for that same user who's already a paid member.
Okay. So, this is a big market. And there are some 800,000 chemists or pharmacists, pharmacies in this country. What are your thoughts on how the organized retail will be able to do to this huge market? How will the consumer benefit?
So I think I'll give you an example, right? So let's say a consumer who buys medicine from a brick and mortar, one of those 8 lakh pharmacies, is, let's say, a diabetic, right? He would need his metformin and other PPIs, multivitamins along with it. If the same consumer buys the medicines from us, we would remember when his next fills are due. We would also tell him, because you are a diabetic, maybe you should get HbA1c tested every 3 months. And you know what, we can get it to you at your doorstep every 3 months so that you don't need to remember. And you know what, we can tell you the trend associated with your HbA1c, how it has moved. Similarly, on the medicine side, over time, I would say, I think data laws in India today, or the way some of the healthcare data in India is today, it is difficult to do, but in future, one can link that medicine consumption to other health parameters of the same patient and say that maybe it's time you visit your doctor and get your Thyronorm dosage increased or decreased based on the diagnostic test or your blood levels that we see.
Okay.
Right. So I think there's a potential to use data here for the benefit of the same patient and help them improve their life along with it.
Okay. But I'll share with you a simple experience that I've had with some of the e-pharmacy companies. I say order my medicines for 3 months, and within 1 week of ordering them and having them delivered, I start getting calls, would you like to buy some more medicines? And once I told them, I said that, I can only eat my dosage as prescribed. Just because you want to push more medicines, I can't eat 3 times the medicine.
So I think we are all guilty of that. What we all need to understand is all of us as a sector want to ensure good consumer experience, but some of these algorithms need time to build. I think in this case, what could have been happening is maybe there are 2 different users registered by you using the same phone number or a different phone number, or 2 different patients registered. So for instance, an Ashutosh registered and an Ashutosh Garg registered, and they know that Ashutosh took the medicine 1 week ago, but they don't know that Ashutosh, and in the algorithm, Ashutosh Garg appears as someone who is due for medicines.
Okay.
Because we don't have a unified patient code, they don't know that these 2 are the same patients. had that prescription which you initially got been a digital prescription with a unique patient ID linked to your Aadhaar, this would not have happened, because most of these algorithms that we all use say that this patient has consumed medicine or purchased medicine for this duration, and most of these medicines also have standard intake cycle, so we know that you don't need it for next 60 days.
Correct.
But if there is another Ashutosh Garg registered on the same platform, we would not know that these two are the same people, and even if they have the same phone numbers, we would not know that these two are same patients, right?
So then tell me, the drug price control order is reducing margins dramatically on all medicines. And yet, the only way a lot of the pharmacy, the e-pharmacy players are attracting customers is with heavy discounts. Where is the money coming from to offer such discounts? Is it just private equity money that's being spent?
So let me put it this way. I think of most of horizontal e-commerce players and vertical e-commerce players, e-pharmacy would probably spend the least. Most of the players don't operate on negative gross margin zones. So we also don't operate on negative gross margin zone. And I know that's not a very strong thing to say. Overall, economically, I think it needs investment. So I think for most, that's the way India is. That's the way consumers are. That you need to front load some of the investment in order to create awareness in the market, and that's what all of us are doing. So till the point that you create that awareness, till the point that users understand that this is a credible, trustable source, you need to bring price, and I think price allows people to experiment, and then over time you'll see that people move to platforms which are more convenient irrespective of price.
Correct. But as a policy, is discounting a sustainable option in the pharmacy business?
It never is. I think healthcare and education are probably amongst few of those sectors where maybe discounting is not needed in order to provide a service. But I think for the near future, the short to medium term, you need to bring down price in order to allow users to experiment, because it is not a sustainable business model to continue to discount, and I think no business can be built on long-term discounting. But I think in near term, to get people to experiment, that is one. And I think structurally also one needs to see that a lot of subscription pharmacies or direct to patient chronic refilling system has historically across global markets brought down price. So if you look at how this market is in US, a Kerma could operate at a lower price than what brick and mortar would operate at, largely because you're taking out the element of running the rents and manpower associated with it. Passing on that benefit to the user is not wrong. How much you pass on and how much competition forces you to pass on is a function of market dynamics, and which at times is fueled by investments that people raise. But I think sustainably, I would say that a subscription pharmacy or an online pharmacy would operate at a price point which is lower than what a brick and mortar would. Correct. Just because it has inherently lower cost structure.
So one more question on pharmacy before I move to the next phase of our chat. 5 years from now, how do you see technology empowering a patient?
Yeah, so I think that's been the dream, to say that a technology which empowers the patient to continue to automatically buy refills. I think what we are trying to build is a connected system where a chronic user's most of the demand can be met around his core healthcare needs. So we today also run algorithms where patients obviously get refills on time, they get retest reminders on time, they get to talk to a dietitian if they want to talk to and understand what food habits they should change, what lifestyle changes they should make, because in chronic diseases, it is more about lifestyle changes than about medicine intake. You can continue to take medicines all you want, but that will not change your health. So the ability to bring it all together needs patient to be on one platform. And all of these services can obviously be provided by people who are best in those respective sectors. So I think with the right technology, one can link the data associated with the pharmacy consumption, with the blood results, along with lifestyle that the patient has, and provide a very personalized approach to healthcare.
Okay, so let's move to the next part, which is as a startup. A lot of startups or entrepreneurs debate whether they should start alone or with a partner or a co-founder. What are your thoughts on this?
See, I think that people should start with a co-founder, because whenever you start with someone, you have someone to go back to in good times, someone to enjoy with in good times, and someone to talk to in bad times. So I think it is always to start with a co-founder. The one approach why people want to go solo at times is probably how to split equity, or how to split roles. But I think by and large one should be confident that if you're building a large outcome, even a relatively smaller percentage of that will also be a large outcome. So it is okay to split equity, have people together in the founding team.
Very good. The next question would be, what are some of the kind of mistakes that a lot of startup founders make? I mean, I made a lot of them. I'm sure you've made a few. And a lot of people would love to hear actual experience of where mistakes happen.
See, I think I would say that, and this is a borrowed quote from Red Hat CEO. He said that, companies die of indigestion and not of starvation. And I can relate to that quote. At times what mistakes we make as startup founders is we try and either grow too fast, or at times get more capital than what we need, and at times also go and change what business we're doing, how we're doing it, because of the capital that has come. Right? I think that one should avoid to the extent possible. It's a very difficult thing to avoid, but to the extent possible one should avoid it. I've also made those mistakes at times got carried away. So yeah, I think that is one advice which I think.
So your view is that we should try and stay with lesser capital than with excess capital.
Yes. I think excess capital for sure leads to behavioral patterns which in long term could be detrimental, and lesser capital allows one to be more considerate and build the core fundamentals of the business first.
Okay. So when should a startup start to scale up? I mean, you start obviously with one city, but everyone wants to talk of pan India.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So I think geographically getting a city model is right, and then scaling up pan India makes sense. But I think more than the geographic model, the economic product market fit, so to say, should be first right. If the product market fit is right, in my view, it is okay to scale in multiple cities in one go, as long as you have the capital to do it and the team to manage it, and not think too much about city economics. As long as you know that the product market fit is there, that at what scale which each of those cost units, or each element be profitable, right? So it is okay to do multiple geographies, but have your product market fit right first.
Okay.
And product market fit really means, in my view, a high customer retention, reasonably high repeat cohorts for the same user, realizing back what you spend on the marketing dollars for that acquiring that user are the two important things, in my view, of how one should, in a commerce driven startup, right? There are a lot of content and other startups which would not have some of these behaviors, but in a commerce driven startup where you spend something to acquire a user, cohorts and getting that cost back are good product market fits. And as long as that is scalable, one can go out and do multiple cities.
And how many cities are you present in?
So we largely service parts of North India, so Rajasthan, UP, Delhi, NCR, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat. So we don't look at it at a city by city level from now in the last 1 year, because we're shipping to all the cities by and large in India. And there are some cities where we have our own logistics. So we have about 26 cities where we have our own on-ground, either warehouse or dispatch centers or logistics systems.
Okay. Very interesting. So let me move to the third part, which is some questions for you personally. You worked with two of the top consulting firms. You're highly qualified. You're an entrepreneur. Have you had any mentors in your journey? And if yes, what has been your learning from them?
I think for me, my father has been my biggest mentor from my early days. When I was in college, when I was in school, when I was doing my first time at BCG, and now in my company, I think every time I've had some issues, I've had discussions with him, and he's been he has always guided me. He's a professional finance and management consultant. He used to do a lot of project financing work. He's an author himself. He's authored a couple of books on Assam VAT. So he's been the one person I always go back to, and I think the answers which I find invariably help me take decisions one way or the other. And I think at time those decisions are they may not seem obvious or wise, but in hindsight they've been good advices. On the work front, I've worked with a partner at Bain Capital, Somna Banerjee. I think how he has helped shape how I think turn every stone approach has. I hated it at that time when I was there, but in hindsight, I remember writing emails back to him and saying this approach has helped me shape who I am, and thanks a lot for it. So I think these are two people, but who've had influence in how I think.
Terrific. So, by that logic, do you think every startup entrepreneur should have a mentor?
I think there should be someone who they go back to and talk, and who is a sounding board and who helps them think through what they're building, how they're building, and helps them on in difficult times. I think the good times are the easy times, the difficult times are the hard times.
Correct.
So they should have someone to talk to.
Correct. So tell me, what would be 3 adjectives that define you?
3 adjectives that define me. I think probably frugal, maybe hardworking, and I think business first approach maybe. Yeah.
Frugal is a very interesting term. I haven't heard this with all the hundreds of interviews that I have done.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great quality to have, especially for a startup entrepreneur. So, one of the questions that I ask all my guests, Krishna, is about failure. I've believed that in India particularly, as parents, we don't teach children, the meaning of failure. And that manifests itself in its behavior patterns on roads and airlines. And, the moment an aircraft lands with Indians, everyone was the first to be get off. And yet we also know that 9 out of 10 startups don't make it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on failure, and what are some of your learnings?
See, I think irrespective of what I say, I think it is difficult when someone is going through it. And irrespective of what we teach, it will be the individual's own journey of failing and then learning how to claw back. What I think could help is few of the success stories of people who failed and then set up something again, and that has worked. Right? I think we need some of those success stories in Indian ecosystem, in the startup ecosystem. I think that could allow a lot of us to learn from failures and say that failures are only stepping stones and one can go on to achieve big things, and these are the 5 people who've done it. Right? I think some of those success stories could help more over time. What we've learned from our failures is to continue to be humble, because it is easy to get carried away in good times and not be humble. So I think it is, and to know that businesses and companies are cycle. So there'll be good times and there'll be bad times. If you know that it is a cycle, then during good times you're not super enthusiastic. During bad times you are not super pessimistic. So if you know it's a cycle, and which I do believe all businesses are cycle, all industries are also cycles. Some may have longer term cycles, some may have shorter term cycles, but they are end of the day cycles. And I think if we understand that, if we know that, then it'll be easy to take failures.
Mm-hmm. So I have only 2 more questions left. One question goes back to LifCare, and that relates to government.
Yeah.
When I was, running Guardian, there was a lot of government intervention, licensing, etc., etc. How is it now?
So I think government intervention is still there. There is high amount of, especially in the online pharmacy side, because this is a space where government understands that there is change needed, and that you cannot prevent technology from influencing sectors, while at the same time they are cognizant of the fact that this could lead to abuse, right? So I think government to some extent is right in doing what they're doing, and the amount of the need for regulation is there, and government is working towards that. And they've been consultative in this approach. To be very frank, they've called a lot of companies like us to discussion table to understand how the service can be best provided, how can they protect against someone who has malified intentions, right? So I think government's approach has been cordial, has been consultative. I think on the day-to-day working approach, let's say the bureaucratic or administrative approach to licensing and running the day-to-day operation, I think that is what it is in India. I think it is better than what it was 10 years ago, especially in Delhi or the markets where people have responded and said, that we can't be too interfering, right? And we've had support where governments, I think in Delhi, for instance, the CM has issued a diktat that you cannot go and just inspect any pharmacy anytime, right? And by and large they follow that. So I think it is better than what it was 10 years ago.
Wow.
And
that's a very interesting diktat, that you cannot just go.
You cannot just step into a pharmacy and inspect. I think the rules allow them. So, but his point has been that you need to be considerate. There needs to be an issue why you're going there, and take that approach to licensing and regulation instead of saying that I'm the big boss and I will come and inspect all of you every day.
Correct.
Right. So, although having said that, I think in healthcare there is supervision needed. There is government intervention needed, because without government interventions, at times things don't happen. Like for instance, DPCO.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's something which helps patients get medicines to be more affordable.
I agree. So Krishna, my last question to you. I've come back to startups. A lot of people will be listening to you doing a successful startup. What would your advice be to a young person who is all starry-eyed and wants to start a business?
My advice would be to not think too much and start.
Okay.
Right, because I think the risk is lower than what we think it is. Because if you are, especially if you are in work coming out of a consulting or a private equity setup, then that you will get some job someday, right? If things don't work out, and so the risk isn't really as much as people make it out to be. So my advice would be to start.
Which means that if you've got a good idea, put your money where your mouth is and move.
Think about it before,
Yeah.
in terms of how good the idea is. Talk to hundreds of people, do interviews, try and sell that concept to real customers, and if you see it working, you should start.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Krishna, thank you very much. It's been an
Thank you.
absolutely incredible conversation, and wish you lots of success.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You podcast. Be sure to visit tbcy.in to join the conversation, access show notes, and discover fantastic bonus content. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Simply search for The Brand Called You. Thank you, and see you next week.